With the context of this video, a few personal stories might help to explain the topic or put it into context. While I was at the Ohio State University from the years 2019 to 2022, I also worked at the Ohio State House. Now, for a backstory, I arrived at the Ohio State House through volunteering activism with political groups on the campus. And also, I was associated with the veteran organization at Ohio State University, or OSU. And I assisted in many volunteering opportunities, as they might call it, but either way, volunteering events. Through my volunteering events with the political side, I was offered a position as a page at the Ohio State House, which is what you might consider an entry-level position. The majority of the other pages were all pretty much teenagers, very young, and they were all college students, with some, at least as I can remember, they were all students from the Ohio State University. This page program is what provided the legislative aid talent pool, shall we say, where the pages would all go around to the different senator's office. And again, this was for the state senate, well, not again, but this was for the state senate of the state government of Ohio. And the legislative aids were taken from the page program. The pages would go around to the different senators' offices and provide resumes and history of experience and whatnot. As far as I can tell, I was the only veteran, and I was also the only the only person of legal drinking age among the pages. While I was at the State House, I viewed, or was given the opportunity to survey certain troubling elements among our alleged representative government, at least on the state level of Ohio. But I imagine that this same theme will be found across all state governments throughout the United States, contiguously. Possibly worse at places like Hawaii. Not so certain about Puerto Rico, but I imagine that's not a great place either. While I was at the Ohio State House, there were quite a few troubling elements that presented themselves, but one specifically was a hearing session that was held in the Senate. Now, the Senate chambers are marked, or were, at least where they held most of the meetings, as something like a financial chamber or something like that. So naturally, while I was working there as a page, the entry-level position, where you basically do courier service and get the mail, do all that type of stuff, refill coffee and things like that. I ran into a girl who I knew from the veteran groups at the university. Now, I don't remember if she had a particular veteran status, but she wasn't active duty. In fact, most of the active duty veterans that were in the veteran group were men. And I believe there was one that was active duty Air Force, one lady. But this lady, young lady, she asked me where I could find the Senate chambers, and she was there with a activist organization and was escorting a lady who looked quite similar to Cruella de Vil from the 101 Dalmatians. She had a fake fur over her shoulders and looked rather ridiculous in I believe it was like a leopard print dress or something like that. Anyway, she was accompanied to this Senate hearing with a older Asian-looking fellow who wore a suit. And the hearing, which I was able to listen in on through my position as the entry-level page, was really ridiculous. First, there was a veteran who had possibly a longer list of achievements than myself, and he came in and talked to the Senate. Mind you, the only people in the room at the time were him, the senators, and these 3 other people, and then of course us, the pages, but we were on the level above it. And so this veteran with experience in different places, he comes in and he talks about an issue that many are familiar with, which is the security of schools. In this case, particularly the Ohio State University and other state-run universities. Now, what he did is he laid out a very practical argument for why 2 things had to happen. One, if guns were to be banned on the schools, then security guards would need to be paid for and placed there. Because, very simply speaking, the universities, not only do they not allow private ownership and carrying of guns, regardless of the implications of that, but they also do not present security guards at any of the doors, and essentially it's free range for anyone who has a ill intent. The police force, or the school police force, is ridiculous, and they can't do anything, of course, without the guidance of the regular police force, and then they rarely patrol and whatnot. This is evidence that the school system has absolutely no intention or no regard for security of students, because the students are essentially used as a shield. They are hostages that are used to protect the corrupt that we find at every level of local and national presence. This, of course, was very obvious when the students provided the backbone of protection during the year 2020, and many, of course, were in many of those so-called protest groups were working in conjunction with the local police so that those protest groups could go and burn all of the local businesses and whatnot, which of course was apparent if anybody watched any of the live streams and things of local citizen journalists that were on the ground. Now, when it comes to the university situation, this person who gave his presentation in front of all the senators, mind you, was asked no questions. And when he got done speaking, he had laid out a very well articulated argument that was backed up by experience, especially when it comes to security. The opposition was this Cruella de Vil looking woman, which she didn't speak. No, she did speak, yes. But she spoke first and then was followed by the older gentleman in the suit of Asian appearance. Their singular argument for why guns should not be allowed, whether by security guards at the doors or by private ownership and carrying or portation of of weapons, was that it would constitute discrimination against the Asian American community. Yep, that was their argument. Every single senator asked them questions. And that one gesture told me exactly which way all the senators were leaning, because essentially they were corporate puppets. But at the time I was not aware of that. I was simply listening in through my entry-level position. Furthermore, while I, as a page, was going around and seeking employment in one of the senatorial offices as a legislative aide, I was first interviewed by 2 young women that were the legislative aide of one of the so-called representatives from Cincinnati. Mind you, that representative from Cincinnati told me that he was nervous about going around and talking to veteran groups, such as with the Legion and other places. Now, why would a representative senator be nervous about talking to veterans? Seems odd, especially considering he's allegedly Republican. Now, when I was interviewed by these two young ladies, one of them bragged to me that she was also a monitor for Wikipedia, or moderator for Wikipedia, which I mean, guess same thing as a monitor. It's like a hall monitor, you know, but administrator for Wikipedia. And that in itself is a ridiculous problem. If you imagine you have legislative aides working in the government, moderating content on Wikipedia. Yeah, it's no surprise that Wikipedia is so jacked up. But I imagine that a lot of professors write the content and their stuff is promoted by these legislative aides that come up through the PAGE program and are directly pulled from the talent pool of, specifically, at least in this case, the Ohio State University. Now, contrast this, well, this issue of security with universities does not actually have to do with the lack of knowledge of the legislators. They know about security. In fact, they were explained as much by people with experience and intelligence like this veteran guy. Not to mention, you can contrast this situation of the university where not only are there no security guards at any of the doors, not only are you not allowed to carry weapons, but you do actually have a lot of reasons to do so, such as students being robbed and accosted and things like that. A lot of nasty stuff happens on the universities that most don't really hear about. But it comes off on all their public emergency announcements like that's going to do anything. And the contrast to the situation in the universities can be found in the governor's office, or I should say the new governor's office. The old governor's office, as many would expect, would be in the Capitol building, not the new governor's office, which was positioned at the top of a nearby tower, if you can imagine that, like some sort of corporate executive king. Some place, a penthouse, basically, where you would have your big wig corporate executive types. Still, not only this, but as a page, I was sent to deliver multiple packages to this top tier governor's office, in which I was always told that the governor was never in. So all of this effort, and the governor didn't even ever show up to his office at the top of a high tower, that you had to pass through multiple layers of security and access this tower through the subterranean level. So first you had to enter the State House, then you had to go to the subterranean level, cross through the parking garage, and then you would have an underground tunnel essentially lined with glass doors and all this other fancy stuff in order to get to the tower that you would then have to take an elevator up to the governor's office, which apparently he was never there. And this is, of course, through multiple layers of security. So they clearly know about security because of all of the effort that they go to insulate the governor's office, and yet refuse to do the same for students at state-run universities. That tells you exactly what the role of students and children perform for these corrupt individuals, because I highly doubt that their own children go to any of these institutions and places. And yet most of these people in these institutions and places are brainwashed to perform services and to essentially be willing participants in some sort of strange slavery scheme to protect these corrupt people. And these corrupt people won't lift a finger to protect them. Finally, in Ohio, I believe it was the 14th of March, 2020, the governor, Mike DeWine, held a press conference in the State House, and that was actually in the Senate chambers, which were marked financial hearing chambers, something like that. And the setup of the Senate chambers is it has two levels. And on the first level, you have the semicircle of chairs where the senators sit. That's a very common setup. Then you have a podium where speakers can go up and talk, and then you have seats lining the side. And then you have a second level, which they call the mezzanine, which is open and it has a railing. It makes a square, semicircle square, or I suppose it'd be a semi-square. And on the bottom are the senators. So people can sit up on the mezzanine top floor, and most of the pages sat in the corner over there. And again, the pages were essentially one rung below legislative aides, the entry-level position. And those are the ones that run around and fill the coffee in offices, deliver mail and water and all that type of stuff. Sort of like your, not exactly janitors, I suppose you would more consider them as errand boys. But when everything shut down in 2020, the so-called pandemic, the governor gave a speech in front of an army of press people, cameras, microphones, all that stuff. And I knew something was going on because as soon as I entered the Senate financial hearing chambers, the entire place was filled and packed with people, which had basically never happened before. There was pretty much no one there for the hearing about safety at universities, but then when the governor was going to give a speech, it was completely packed. And there was security everywhere. In fact, the sheriffs were all there, and they had brought in a dog to sniff things and stuff. And so this is a quite a good amount of security just for a visit from the King DeWine so that he could give a speech. And they wouldn't lift a finger for students, naturally. So when he gave the press conference, he was talking about, everything's good. So we're going to shut down some stuff like the airports and things like that, but none of the schools and all that. Lo and behold, big surprise, everything got shut down. But the interesting part about this is the layers of effort that they go through to insulate their specific so-called heads of state and all of these other things, but they don't insulate or protect or defend anyone else because everybody else is not part of their club or their group. So I knew that everything was going to happen. I didn't know to what level it would happen, but I knew that it was going to happen beforehand because of that speech that was given at the senatorial chambers. And it was very stark contrast, shall I say, to other things that were going on. Thank you. And I hope this helps to clarify the topic.